Good afternoon once again to all the participants and the streaming audience. We start the last panel of this entrepreneurship track from the 12th ENISE. This panel will debate on the relationship between investors and startups. We will see the difference between those investors and the M&As that we discussed this morning. We'll see what's the funding mechanism for startups. And we will speak about the goals that are normally set for this type of relationships. Maybe we talk about the investment. As the moderator, we have my colleague, Ms. Sara García, responsible for the talent department at INCIBE. Well, we don't have much time, and we are the last panel of the second day, so I will kindly ask the participants to be brief in their presentations so that we can have a Q&A session. I will introduce you to... Maybe you could put the presentation on. I will introduce you to the members of the panel. We have Cristina Bentué, we have Juan Revuelta, who is the investment manager of Swanlaab Venture Factory. We have Sánchez Arboleya, investment manager of Faraday, and the CEO of Enigmedia. Maybe you can tell us a bit about investments. What are your opinions? Well, we are a technological company, and we have launched a sales product mainly for the banking sector, the insurance sector, companies that have a high level of maturity in their security systems. For us, it's been very good to have investors, because with that type of product that we had, the stage where we're at, the investment helped us to move faster and to do much more than we could have had without this investment. So we've been lucky, and I think it was very good for us to meet Juan, one of our investors, and for us it was a process based on learning, because the investors not only contribute money, they also contribute the how to manage your company, how can you transform that product into something else. You have to use the engineering that you've used on that product and expand the life cycle of the product. The product doesn't start with development, it starts with marketing and ends with sales. You have to set up this cycle in a very appropriate, disciplined manner. So investors have been extremely helpful for this. This experience is a very good experience. Thank you very much. Well, I think that, can you hear me? Well, in our case, Swanlaab, it's a venture capital fund. It's promoted from an Israeli venture capital that has been working in Israel for many years. and their vocation of growing internationally have led them to us. The funds want to do local funding, so they want to invest in technological companies with. When we invested, it's when the company has a product that it's mature enough to go to the market. And we are comfortable at a set amount, and then we save some money to keep supporting those companies. So in terms of sector focus, we are very interested in innovation, as we all do. I think that for us, innovation has to be in technology. So we don't look for anything in social sectors or in the marketplaces. We focus on pure technology company. Like cybersecurity, we are a bit of agnostics in terms of technology and market product, and we have 6 companies in our portfolio, out of which 2 work with R&D in healthcare, travel care, and we have an insurance one. That's great, thank you. Now we move on.
Pues por introducir a Faraday,
I wanted to introduce Faraday. We're a group of investors. Juan was talking about a fund, but we offer opportunities to our investors, and they choose one by one what they want to invest in and what amount they want to invest. We've been active since 2011. We have 24 participating companies, and in terms of the sector, we're agnostic. We're looking for innovation, but it doesn't have to be technological. It could be other types of innovation. And in terms of the topic that concerns us, we understand that not all entrepreneurs are doomed to understand each other or understand the investors and love their investors. It depends on what business model they want to fund and the rate of business they want to keep, and also depending on the asset profile of the company. There are investors that are merely financial, and it requires less understanding and less communication. Thank you very much. Carlos, we are a cybersecurity startup. We started in 2012 in fields that used to be ICT, but in the past 2 years we focused on industrial cybersecurity. We knew that we would be hand in hand with investors because our innovation was basic science from a PhD, and to make it a product, we needed to know about many things. We did our first rounds in 2013 with small funds to productivize the first product that we launched, and then in 2016 we received a major investment, and that's when we moved on to industrial cyber security field. But it's true that our last investment gave us the market knowledge, contacts, places to assess the ideas, validate if our idea made sense. And we have to do this since the beginning, and in this sense, this has allowed us to get a product into the industrial market, which has found a niche in the market. Sometimes in the industrial market it's difficult to do it because this market is not mature enough in some verticals, and in those verticals where they're stronger, there are larger companies that have a very long processes for purchase. So the investors can help you to identify the niche and to validate your idea, and of course the push to bring the product to the market. In terms of what you're saying, Carlos, I wanted to ask you, why is it so important to have this love relationship between investors and startups? What does it contribute to this startup? Because maybe I, as a startup, have the funds, but what can you get from the investors? What do you think is the contribution they make? Well, first of all, I wanted to differentiate what type of company needs investment, because not all companies need investment and they don't get disqualified for this reason. The type of companies where Diego or I invest in are companies that we think that have a great potential for scalability. They have the capability to bring a product to the market, and depending on how you do things, you can get fast-growing sales with a very different way of making expenses. So you have to go out there and find it. There's other types of business where you don't need to do this. For example, a bar might go very well and you don't need additional investment. So in our case, the exponential growth in a stage where there is already a developed product, a company needs the commercial structure, they need the marketing and sales structure, and this requires money and time. And they need funds. The company are normally at a stage where they're not selling enough, or they're selling very little. They need a bit of air, and that's what they give them to reach the next stage. In your case, Diego, I don't know if you would like to add something. When to contribute to a company, you have to take into account the availability. At the moment, we have several companies in our portfolio, so you don't have much time. So you have to focus on the topics and issues where you can actually contribute real value due to the time limits that you have. And also, you have to take into account the willingness of the company that wants the help, because sometimes companies they want more than what you can offer, or the other way around. So what can we contribute? We can fund projects where a traditional stakeholder can't. We can offer help to get funds for the next rounds. We can offer strategic support to make decisions, also financial contributions in terms of the financial structure, and also support for human resources. We can help them attract talent. So what happens after there is this link between startup and investor? What's the relationship like? What would you advise to people who are thinking of relating with an investor or a startup? How do you manage the community? How do you manage the support? What happens next? Stephen? So what happens next is that you set up the company, you create the structure so that the company can grow at a rate that the fund likes. And also what the founders of the company want to do. After signing the investment, then you have to start creating a plan and see what you want to set up and who do you need to hire. And there are investors that are active in this way. They're not only passive, they not only contribute the funding, but they also contribute the methods, the know-how. They contribute their experience, a general experience, because for small companies in a new market, this is the thing to do. So they contribute their experience that adds real value to startups. I would also say that when you sign, it's a great day. It's a very nice day for everyone. But then the day later, you see that, well, there are shareholders that can do some things and cannot do others, and you see the daily running of the company. There are things that you need to manage. So this is a bit like a marriage. When you get married, you commit to take care of the other person, but then the day-to-day life, it's hard. You love each other, but you have to say things that might not be very nice for the other person. But if everything has been aligned and everything is doing a common effort, a joint effort, people are willing to listen, and then people are open. The issues I faced were when you try to talk to someone and they are not open at all to receive your communication. In my experience, when people are open to solve the problems, when you are willing to try and solve them, then you can move forward and then you can understand each other. Carlos? Yeah, I agree with Juan. Before signing the documents, you have to talk with the investor, and there has to be conversations, because sometimes you need the investors at a different time, and from that moment on, when you sign the relationship, you have to understand that in this relationship you're both trying to win something. Sometimes this can get difficult, especially for startups where the founders are more closed and they think that there's people coming from out there trying to tell them what to do. For people that are more technical, maybe they don't understand that there are other areas that are very important for the company to grow. So you have to understand that you're going towards the same direction. You are in the same boat. So you have to understand that it's a win-win situation for both. So highlighting what Juan was saying, well, it's like we were talking about the shareholders agreement. It seems like it's like a Lord's agreement in a sense, because you have to have respect, you have to have trust, and as my colleague was saying, you have to remember that you have a common goal and that you are in the same boat. When you do the investment, you have to take care of the relationship, because sometimes it creates a situation of employee boss, where one of the parties gives orders to the others, or maybe the proximity becomes a friendship, and that also can make a loss of impartiality. So you have to find the balance and you have to take care of it. Marriage is not good and you have to work on it. I would like to add something else. When you sign the documents, before you sign it, there is a conversation between the founders, the partners, the investors. Well, there is a book that is very good that Juan recommended, and it's a book written by investors for startups, and it's from the perspective of the investor, and it explains why they add a few things in the clauses in the investment. So it's a very good book to understand what's the business of these people, what investors look for an agreement with startups. Well, as you were saying, I understand that you speak a different language. So this understanding, it's difficult if there is not a willingness to understand each other and to have a common project, because that's what you're looking for when you get into this partnership, this investment. If there's anyone in the audience that thinks, what can they do? What would you advise them From a startup point of view, what are the tips to find those investments? You were talking about search for someone who's in the same mindset for your project, because otherwise maybe it's just a convenience marriage and it doesn't work. So what advice would you give to make that marriage a success and that it just lasts forever? Well, in our case, everything would happen if at 8-10 years everyone is doing something else, because that's what we're saying. Part of the success of the project is to understand what are the goals of the other party. From the side of the investors is to understand if the entrepreneur really has a vocation of living off this project in the long term or not. Or maybe they have a mindset of creating a project and then the project will remain alive and I will do something else. And it's the same for the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur that wants to accept or give access to venture capital in their shareholders need to know that they can exit. People after 15-20 years are not the same, so they have to do their homework and understand who are they marrying, and there has to be a chemistry before they can go ahead. I think that is key to raise capital. You always have an appropriate investor for the moment where the company is. The company needs to understand where they are, what's their stage, because maybe you get an investor for later stages, but maybe they don't pay you attention. So if you do this in a recurrent manner, then the investor will get tired and there will be lots of frustration. So there is work to be done beforehand. There is this stage of an embryo. There's maybe specific business angels that can help you there. So you have to identify the goals. And then once it's identified, you have to go and try to achieve it, because then it will become less frustrating. So there is a prior work before the startup gets into finding an investor. Is that what you're saying? Yes, from the point of view of a startup, one of the great advantages that you might have is not having the need of funding if it's only for growing. You don't have to. You shouldn't try to find funding for surviving. Well, this is it's a great advantage to go to investors with plenty of time, because then you have the time to choose from the different investors and take your time to make the decision. And I think these would be one of the best advantages of negotiating the investment. If you want to add something else, well, first of all, you have to know that the company needs the funding. First, you have to be very clear of this. Then, as Juan was saying, because there are entrepreneurs, investors that are very transparent with the criteria we have, and other entrepreneurs, investors that haven't read the web page. They had the project at a stage where you, as an investor, can't invest. So you have to do your homework. You have to know which investors you're looking for. You have to have you have to be in a stage where you're just trying to grow. You're not trying to survive. If I was the entrepreneur, I wouldn't just go to the first investor. I would go to the second one with an improved strategy and pitch. Well, I wanted to add something else. As I was saying before, investor, entrepreneurs, you're in the same boat, but you need to know where you're going. You have to be very clear about what the investor wants to do and what the entrepreneur wants to do, because otherwise it would be very difficult to reach the same place, because maybe you're trying to go to different places, so you have to have these into account. And of course, most of all, you have to talk about it, because you make little changes, you do some fine-tuning. Maybe in your first startup there are plenty of things that you don't know, and that you will learn by talking to investors. They will ask the right questions that you need to answer before you find the investor that you really need. Thank you very much, Carlos. I don't think we have time.
Next, we are going to talk about main topics, but I wouldn't like to say goodbye to this panel without getting some final conclusions. So I think that from the points that you have highlighted in the end, the opinion is that there are some startups that are going to need some investor, but we are going to have to spend some time and some care looking for those investors to know exactly where, when to do it. I also get that point of not going the first one to the interview. So I think that with investments is the same that with interviews, job interviews, that you don't have to go the first one. Thank you very much for the four of you, for all the questions that you may have. Thank you very much to the audience, and we say goodbye. Well, thank you, Sara. Thank you to all the participants of this panel and all of those that have gone through here yesterday and today. So we reached the end of this entrepreneur session. We would love if you could share your impressions and your pictures through our social networks. And now in the main auditorium will take place the award, the ENISE award presentation, and also the closing of this session. Thank you very much.